Come on in, pull up a chair and take a load off, because today I'll be reviewing and paging through Castles and Crusades, Monsters and Treasure from Troll Lord Games. Is this volume a near indispensable reference for not only Castles and Crusades, but for many old school fantasy role-playing games? Or is this a case of been there, done that, move it along, nothing to see? Well, you'll find out right after this. Howdy, 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 gang. Welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. As I mentioned in the open, today I'll be reviewing and paging through Castles and Crusades, Monsters and Treasure from Troll Lord Games. It's written by Robert Doyle and Stephen Chenault, with Davis Chenault, Todd Gray, Matt Golden, and Christian Harris. Artwork is provided by Peter $20 Bradley, Mark Sandy, Sarah Dreamy Walker, Jason Walton, Eric Wilson, Brian Swartz, Mark Allen, and Danielle Bigliardo. Hopefully I've pronounced everybody's name correctly. This 368-page hardcover carries an MSRP of $49.99, or you can grab just the PDF for $19.99. Do want to mention, strangely enough, I could not find this fifth printing of Monsters and Treasure on Drive-Thru RPG. All the other Castles and Crusades books are available there. Strangely enough, I just didn't stumble across this. But in PDF, you can get it from Troll Lord Games' website for $19.99. All right, that said, let's swing on over to the other camera, because here I've got Monsters and Treasure. A few things to point out before we dive on in. Fine folks over at Troll Lord Games were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. These days, it's important that you know that. I'm also going to stay picture-in-picture up here, as I usually do. So as we take a peek through, I will be cutting off a little bit of the upper left portion of the book. We're not going to look at each and every page, but I do want to give you a very good feel for what you'll find in Monsters and Treasure, as well as share my thoughts about the book as well. First off, let's take a look at the back here. Upon the edge of battle lie the spoils of glory. Beasts of legend and myth, monsters great and small, these are the adventurers' fare. Dragons, giants, orcs, foul-minded fae, the dreaded hydra, the riddling sphinx, the naga, wyverns, griffins. Monsters and Treasure has all this and so very much more. What lies herein? Monsters and Treasure contains over 400 monsters for your Castles and Crusades game. Each entry consists of an in-depth description of the monster, along with its nature, habits, the territories they occupy, their predilections, and all other relevant material. Each entry contains all the statistical information required to run the monster at any game table. Contained within this book is a wealth of information for the castle keeper. Along with the monsters are hundreds of unique treasure items, advice on role-playing monsters, handling combat with monsters, creating monsters, rules for awarding treasures, and creating magic items. So jam-packed with information. One thing I love about the most recent printing of Castles and Crusades is that the three main books, I don't want to say core books, and I'll explain why in just a few moments, but the three main books, their covers are all homages to the original Advanced Dungeons and Dragons books. So obviously enough, this is an homage to the Monster Manual. This is my favorite of the covers, by the way. I really like this a lot. All right, let's dive on in. If you have caught my reviews of the Player's Handbook as well as the Castle Keeper's Guide, you know that I have really enjoyed delving into Castles and Crusades. And one thing to mention is you might be sitting there thinking, oh, okay, so this is the monster book. This is the third of the core books that I need to run Castles and Crusades. That is not the case. You do want to have this book here. You also want to have the Player's Handbook. The Castle Keeper's Guide is optional. It is a lot of optional information. There's a lot of great background on how to run Castles and Crusades, but you don't need it to actually play. So there are two core books, Castles and Crusades, Player's Handbook and what we're looking at right now. So we get an introduction, a breakdown. How are you going to use this book? So it's going to talk about how are these entries broken down, what's in the entries, what do things mean, like their intelligence, their alignment, so on and so forth, numbers appearing, their environment. So to kind of give you an idea, the breakdown, you're going to have number appearing, what is their size, what are their hit dice, what are their saves. So monsters, just like player characters, get saving throws, but it's physical and mental is how it breaks down. It's not a bunch of different saves. And they might have both, or they might not be able to save at all. They might have no saves. So that information is going to be in here also. Movement, attacks, special abilities such as regeneration are tackled as well. As I mentioned, alignment, intelligence. So it doesn't have an intelligence stat, but it gives you like animal intelligence, average intelligence, high, even godlike, deific intelligence. So it gives you a breakdown of that. What kind of treasure? There are treasure tables towards the back of the book in the treasure section that you can roll on to randomly generate the treasure, as well as experience points that you would gain by defeating it. You'll also get information about what is this thing. So first paragraph or two is going to talk about the creature itself. Then you're also going to get a section about utilizing that monster or creature, what have you, in combat. So I appreciate that because amazingly enough, there are monster manuals that just kind of give you a breakdown. Okay, this is the creature, and it gives some details, gives you like special abilities and things like that. But then it doesn't give the game master, or in this case, the castle keeper, information on how do you utilize this monster in combat encounters. There's a reason why the monsters know what they're doing, and more the monsters know what they're doing is a bestseller for dungeon masters running 5th edition D&D, because the monster manual is a little weak as far as the actual tactics that these creatures would utilize. So I do appreciate that quite a bit. Then we're also going to get information about what kind of, special abilities does this creature have? And so as an example, let's see what we got here. Let's use the lesser elemental radiance. So it's a radiance elemental. So we get the breakdown, number, size, saves, so on. Talks about what is this? So where the plane of fire merges with the positive energy of the plane of epidiction, I don't have any idea what that is. They form the plane of radiance. All is bright and shiny here. So it goes on to discuss what is this elemental? Combat. The radiance elemental will strike out with a bolt of energy that can damage or heal as they see fit. The size of the creature determines not only the damage or healing it can inflict, but its armor class as well as below. And then we get a breakdown. Then we have mastery. When on its own plane or surrounded by radiance, the creature gains +1 on all attack rolls. Jump to something else. There we go. Dark Fairy, a bogey. Shape-shifting. This fairy ability is the same as the Barquest's and other Fey races, except that it takes a challenge level 8 to spot the disguise from a bogey. Breath weapons, immortality with mortals, pass without trace, mist form, spell-like ability. All of this is covered in the entries. And the entries are relatively short. They're not page upon page. Most of these you're going to find 1 or 2 monsters on each page. Let's talk a little bit about the quality of the book itself. Page quality is good. It's solid. It's got a bit of a sheen to it. I know some people don't like that. Other people do like that. As long as the page quality is pretty decent, it doesn't matter if it's got a bit of a slick feel to it or if it's just matte paper. So there is that. Binding looks pretty good. Should hold up pretty well. Artwork throughout is solid. It is not uniform, though. And you know I talk about the uniformity of artwork in role-playing game books. Not so much in a monster manual, because I don't expect hundreds of entries to all have the same style of artwork through a variety of artists. So I kind of let that slide. I mean, it's not that big a deal when I'm reviewing something, but it is something that you do notice. So as an example here, we've got some artwork that looks like it could be straight from a comic book. Then we've got artwork that looks a little bit more almost like sketch art, color sketch art. And then we'll have other pieces that look like traditional fantasy artwork. And as I mentioned, the artwork throughout is all solid. It's just not uniform in style. Something else I should point out, I wish there were images for each of the entries, or at least for each of the fantastical creature entries. Here we go, speaking about kind of traditional looking fantasy artwork. We do have some full page pieces throughout, not a ton, but a few. Anyway, I was going to say, I would like to have seen images for each of the fantastical creatures. Do I need an image of a horse? No. Do I need an image of a giant turtle? No. I know what those would look like. Do I know what an air mephit looks like? No, not necessarily. Of course, there is a description, but I still would have liked to have seen an image. It's not a huge deal, but it is something to mention. Now, I also have pointed out that if you're running Castles and Crusades, you can very easily port over old school adventures and materials to Castles and Crusades. It's very easy to port that over. So you can use Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, second edition Dungeons and Dragons, even third edition, as well as just D&D, basic, expert, so forth, and port that stuff over pretty easily. You can also do the opposite. It would be relatively easy for you to utilize this monster portion of Monsters and Treasure with old school Renaissance games, or maybe you're running a retro clone. So this could be a very useful reference for you in that respect as well. So we're going to get about 311 pages of monsters throughout, and then we're going to move into the treasure section. Here's another full page piece of artwork. So when we get into treasure, we get a bit of a breakdown of, what kind of treasure are you going to include? Coins, jewelry, gems. Then, of course, we've got magic items. We have a variety of tables that you can utilize as well, because, of course, each of the monsters and creatures has a treasure key. So you can roll on that to give you, different values or items that might be part of it. We get information on how to create magic items, how to create staves and wands. We get examples of magic items as well as cursed items. We get some cursed items too. But as an example, we've got Boots of Speed, Broom of Flying, Cloak of the Manta Ray, Cloak of Resistance. So a lot of the magic items are kind of straight out of traditional fantasy role-playing games. So we've seen a lot of these before, but there are some that are unique and I have not encountered in the past. So we've got that. We'll have the cursed items, then discussion of different magic items, sentient swords, things like that. Then we get our open game license, and that wraps up Castles and Crusades, Monsters and Treasure. So let's swing on over to the other camera so I can provide some final thoughts and a review score. I really have enjoyed digging into Castles and Crusades. I've got a couple more books for me to review, so those are on the horizon. But the trio of main books, once again, not core books, but main books, have been great. I really enjoyed them. And I will once again point out, if you are interested in running an old school themed fantasy role-playing game, which has more modern mechanics, then I certainly recommend Castles and Crusades. Now, for the Monsters and Treasure book, sure, a lot of these creatures we have seen before. They're being ported over to Castles and Crusades. Is this a must-have if you're running another old-school fantasy role-playing game? No. I mean, it's not essential, but you could certainly use a lot of the info that's in here for your own games. I do appreciate the fact that we've got the little portions, even though it's maybe a paragraph on most of them, about how to utilize the monsters in combat. That is appreciated most definitely as well. If you're going to run Castles and Crusades, this is a must-have. You've got to have this book. You really, really do. If you're running something else, I could see you owning it because it is a cool reference overall. Quality of the book is really well done. It should hold up to a lot of repeated play. Wish there were more pieces of artwork for fantastical creatures that I might not necessarily know what they look like, or my players may not know what they look like. So there is that. That's kind of the only major ding I've got. There are a few typos where I'm kind of surprised after 5 printings that those typos still showed up, but they're not a lot. I mean, but when you see it, you're kind of like, huh, this has been reprinted 5 times. It's still there, huh? Not that big a deal. All right. Anyway, on a scale of 0 to 10, I give Castles and Crusades, Monsters and Treasure a very solid recommendation. I give it an 8.5 out of 10. I think it is that good. And as I've mentioned before, I am really leaning towards running some Castles and Crusades for my own gang. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, ding that bell. It'll not only let you know when I upload videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more that you won't find on the YouTube channel. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. A couple other things to mention real quick. The month of October is a big deal with us at thegaminggang.com. So every live stream is going to feature role-playing games. So we are not going to feature, of course, we do news pieces about board games. But if you're not familiar with the stream, each and every episode features either a first look or a review of a tabletop game. Well, this month, it's all role-playing games. Also, each and every day of October is a new review at thegaminggang.com. And every evening, I host a spooky old-time radio show. Yeah, I know. It's, it's Halloween time. And you can check those out every evening at 9 p.m. Central over at thegaminggang.com. All right. Thank you very much for watching. Always appreciated. And of course, here's hoping each and every one of you gets to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang. Oh, hey, you're still here. That's okay. You don't have to leave just yet. In fact, why don't you subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel right here, or take a peek at the latest live stream, or even find out what YouTube recommends you check out from the channel. And of course, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thanks again for watching.